Welcome to Jesus and Me with Pastor Tom Harmon, who is the lead pastor of Kingsville Community Church. Here you will find relevant Bible teachings and practical training about being a follower of Jesus Christ. And now, Pastor Tom.
We welcome you this morning, and if you're visiting with us, we just want to encourage you to give us your name and address in the clipboards that go around. We'd like to send you a gift in the mail, and just thank you for your visit. And we welcome you that are joining us on the internet this morning, and we're glad to have you with us as well as a part and to share in the life here of our church. So how many of you are busy today? How many busy people do we have out there, eh? Oh my goodness. How many would describe your average week as crazy busy? All right, okay, all right, good. I'm getting a lot of nods. I'm getting a lot of, yep, Pastor, that's me, you got me. You know, anyway, if you ask anybody today how things are going, they will say busy. Isn't that right? Busy has become the default response to those words. How's things going? Just busy. We're busy. In fact, we're more than busy. We're crazy busy. We're so busy we don't have time to think. And that's where we find ourselves today in our culture. To many people, this is kind of it's one way of congratulating themselves. Oh, I'm so busy. It's a congratulations to me, a badge of honor we carry around that's disguised as a complaint. Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so wonderful. I'm so busy. People, if you will often respond to your I'm so busy, they'll respond and say, well, that's a good problem to have. And then what you and I do is we turn around and we agree with them. Yes, I suppose that's better than not being busy at all, isn't it? And that's kind of what our culture has been kind of gotten into. Now, when I'm talking about busy people, I'm not talking about the single mother who's working at 3 jobs a day and has to get on a bus to hit every one of those jobs, or the person in ICU who's doing a 16-hour shift. If you ask them how they're doing, they won't tell you they're busy. They'll tell you they're tired. In fact, they'll say, I'm dead, tired, dead on my feet. But I'm talking to people who are busy people. Tom Curter makes this observation in the New York Times. He says this: it's almost always people whose lament busyness is purely self-imposed. Work and obligations they've taken on voluntarily. Classes and activities they've encouraged their kids to participate in. They're busy because of their own ambition and drive and anxiety, because they're addicted to busyness and dread what they might have to face in its absence. Oh, ouch. That puts all this crazy busy stuff in a different light. But it's good news, because if we've brought it on ourselves, then we can control it and we can stop it. We can do things and make small changes in our lives to make big differences that'll affect your family. It'll affect your health. It'll affect your friendships. In most cases, our busyness is self-imposed busyness. Now, the problem with being crazy busy, this is not just a modern problem. This is a problem that we have had for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We have been busy. For some reason, the human race gets itself stuck in crazy busyness. We just do. It's our default. It's plagued us for years. And so today I want to look at the example of Moses. Moses has a great example of this. And I want to look at the teachings of Paul and what he teaches us about being crazy busy and how to change it. How to get back the sanity in your life. Well, first of all, I want to talk to you about a sermon. Sermon in a sentence. What are we trying to say today? By setting limits and allowing other people to use their gifts, God will receive glory through your life. That's the sermon today. That's it in a sentence. By setting limits and allowing other people to use their gifts, God will receive greater glory through your life. Busyness with no limits is not good. Busyness with no limits is not good. Let's look at this story in Exodus chapter 18 of Moses. Moses is a really great example of somebody who's doing not good. No good. Here it is. Exodus chapter 18, verses 1 to 3. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, and Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah. His father-in-law Jethro took her back along with her 2 sons. Okay, you got the picture? Moses is in the middle of this project, and he has a separation in his marriage and sends his wife and his 2 kids back to dear old dad. Now, my father-in-law told me there were no refunds and there were no returns. Apparently, Jethro didn't tell Moses that. All right, let's skip ahead. Exodus chapter 18, verses 13 to 18. So what's going on? Jethro brings Zipporah, Moses' wife, and his 2 sons back to Moses. And so he stays the night. The next day, this is 18 verse 13, Moses sat as judge for the people, while the people stood around him from morning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you're doing for the people? Why do you sit alone while all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me and decide between one person and another, and I make known to them the statutes and instructions of God." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good." Busyness without limits is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Busyness with no limits is not good. This comes right from Moses' father-in-law's mouth. "What are you doing?" he says. "This is not good." Now, do you think that Jethro is just a meddling old father-in-law that should keep his nose out of Moses' business? Or do you think that he's giving him some wisdom from many more years lived? I think this is wisdom. What's wrong with being busy? What's wrong with being crazy busy? What's wrong with what we're doing and what everybody else is doing out there that we're calling and telling ourselves this is good when in fact it's not? What's wrong with it? Well, you can go online today, you can find all kinds of problems, lists and lists of the problems that are often caused because we're too busy. But I just want to highlight some of the things that lists include. The first one is this: family breakdown. Family breakdown. Families break down because of busyness, because people get detached and they're no longer a part of their life. In fact, we use busyness to push our families and our loved ones away. And this is what Moses had done. Moses had pushed his wife and 2 sons away, pushed them all the way back to her original birth family, to the father-in-law, and said, "You go live with them." Is it any wonder that Jethro freaks out when he gets there and sees what it is that has caused the separation between Moses and his family and says, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you? This is no good." If you were Moses' father-in-law or mother-in-law, you'd be upset at him too for what he pushed your daughter and your grandchildren away about. And so Jethro tries to give him some priestly, godly wisdom regarding his life. Family breakdown. Another one is burnout. Burnout. Jethro indicates to Moses that he's heading for burnout. That's what he says to him. You are going to wear yourself out. You're going to burn yourself out, Moses. In fact, he stayed there long enough, he probably saw some of the signs. People who burn out become easily irritated and hypersensitive towards other people, what they did, how they looked, what they said. They may experience restlessness, the inability to have a solid night's sleep. Burned out people fall into escapist behaviors such as substance abuse, overeating, pornography, excessive usage of the internet, gaming all night, watching television unceasing, playing with their little gadgets and cell phones here, and they can't seem to look up or interact with any other people because they're trying to escape. Even burnouts become more compulsive about work. Here's what happens. They feel burned out. They lack energy. And they think the problem, they feel guilt. And they think the problem is that they need to even work harder, hastening their burned out and their destruction. In extreme cases, burnout leads to anxiety and depression. Jethro may have seen some of these things beginning in Moses' life already. He may have seen them. He may have been able to put his finger on them. The question is this, though. Do you see any of these signs in your life? Are you experiencing any of this in you? And then the last thing is disconnection with others. Jethro says, Moses, not only are you burning yourself out, but you're burning these people out too. You're burning bridges with all of these people that are standing around all day, because instead of acting like the leader that God has called you to be to lead these people out of Egypt, you are acting like Judge Judy and you're deciding who owns the ugly puppy. And they are so frustrated with you, they're fed up, and they're ready to give up. And they are so distanced from you as the person that they're supposed to be respecting and leading. Moses' busyness was becoming too heavy. Too heavy, that's what Jethro says, for everyone else to bear. In contrast to Moses' startling example of what not to do, we have Paul's teaching about putting limits on ourselves. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, beginning at verse 14. We, however, I like this, we, however, will not boast beyond limits, but will keep within the field God has assigned to us. Wow. What is your field? That's an important question. To reach out even as far as you, for we were not overstepping our limits. See what Paul is saying? Moses was overstepping his limits. Paul said, we did not overstep our limits when we reached you. We were the first to come all the way to you with the good news of Christ. Now, Paul here is defending his work, his ministry. And what he's saying is, you know what, we didn't do anything wrong. People were criticizing him, and he tells these critics, he speaks up for himself and talks about his own busyness. And the first thing that Paul tells us in here is you have to know yourself. You really have to know yourself. Paul says he kept within the field that God assigned him to. What's your field? Because if you don't know your field, then I can guarantee you that you're probably playing out of it and in somebody else's field where you have no business belonging. The first person you lose when you are too busy is you lose your true self. People who are busy replace the image of their true self with a distorted, narcissistic image of a superhero able to do what other people find impossible. You can write that down. You lose your true self through busyness. And you create this other self that's not real, that's a superhero. Our complaints about being busy are just a thin facade that hides our faulty identity that I'm really Superman, I'm really Superwoman, and I can do anything. Paul knew he wasn't Superman. Paul knew his field. He knew, here's where you find your field. You need to know your strengths, your gifts, your talents, your abilities. You need to know what you're made of. What God has put into you is what God has put in your hands. And you also need to know and accept your weaknesses. Remember, Paul had that talk with God about a thorn in the flesh that he had, a weakness. He didn't understand. God, take this away. And what did God say to him? My grace is sufficient for you. That's what we have to. We have to come to that place in our own weaknesses. Say it with me. My grace is sufficient for you. We have to become settled with the fact that we can't be everything, do everything, or we'll burn ourselves out. And God gave Paul his weaknesses to remind him that he wasn't Superman, that he had limits, and for those things that he couldn't do, he would just have to trust God with. Paul understood that. So he knew himself, and because he knew himself, he established limits. He says, we're not overstepping our limits. The most effective people know their limits and stay within those boundaries. They have a schedule, they have goals, they have priorities. And those limits help them not feel guilty about not being busy all the time. Limits. So Moses was doing what was not good. And he needed to establish limits in order to be effective. And Jethro advises Moses to make one major change. Just one. And that was he needed to trust others with responsibility. And we need to do the same thing. Let's look at 18, verse 21. Jethro says this, you should also look for able men among all of the people, men who fear God, are trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Set such men over them as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Let them sit as judges for the people at all times. Let them bring every important case to you, but decide every minor case themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all of these people will go home in peace. Moses receives some wise advice from Jethro. Jesus modeled this necessity of sharing responsibility with others. Can you imagine how hard it must have been for the Son of God to say, yes, I'm going to give my work of the kingdom, of my kingdom. Yes, I'm building my kingdom, I'm going to give that all to you. And Jesus begins this even in his own ministry, where he sends 72 others out to do his work, to go to the cities and towns and to preach the gospel, to pray for people, to heal the sick, to do whatever it was that needed to be done. And listen to what happens when they return. In Luke chapter 7, you'll find this story. Verse 17 and 18, it says, the 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. And he replied, this is Jesus, he says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. You see what happened when Jesus shared the responsibility, the effect of that in the spiritual world, he perceived and saw Satan fall like lightning. Why did Satan have such a quick fall? Because Jesus had multiplied himself 72 times. What a shock that was to the devil's kingdom. Man, he couldn't handle one Christ on the earth. Jesus just multiplied that by 72 times. And Jesus has multiplied that by literally 1 billion times today. because He works through us and shares with us His responsibility. The early church in the book of Acts was set up so that the responsibility of ministry was to be shared and not the sole work of one or two people or leadership. In Acts chapter 6, there was a problem. There were all these widows that needed to be fed, and the people who were feeding them were the apostles. And pretty soon, the church was growing, and they couldn't keep up. And things started to fall through the cracks, and people around the church started grumbling, saying, well, you know, the apostles, if they were any good, they'd do this, and the pastor should do this, and Peter should do that, and it became a big issue. And what was not happening was the leaders who were responsible for feeding the people, they were not spending any time with God in His Word or hearing from God and being able to feed the people, because they were running around feeding and looking after tables. And so what they said was, choose among us. Let's choose 70 people to do the work, to do the serving. They called them deacons. Let's choose 70 people who will be deacons, who will serve and do the work, so that we can spend time in prayer and study with the Word of God, because we got to look after this part. So some other people got to look after this part. And it's shared responsibility. And here's what Paul teaches. Again, we come back to the teaching of Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. He says, we do not boast beyond limits, that is, in the labors of others. In other words, we're not going to take credit for what other people are doing. Boy, does that ever happen everywhere. Eh? You go out in any business, you've got jealousy, suspicion, and I did it, I thought of it first. Paul says, we don't do that. We don't take credit for any of that stuff, of what others are doing. I don't know where I am here. Oh, I got this click. I don't know. I got this clicker thing, but I get so confused. Here we are. But our hope is, as your faith increases, our sphere of action among you may be greatly enlarged. Here's what Paul said. You know what? We allow other people to use their gifts. We give other people responsibility. We allow other people to exercise their purpose and do the things that they enjoy. And when we do that, and we get out of the way, and we don't interfere, the ultimate thing is that we multiply ourselves, and we become far, far more influential and effective by sharing the responsibilities. So what gets in the way of you and I sharing responsibilities with others? Well, here's a few. Number one, pride. We like being Superman. We like being Superwoman. We like that ego. And I suspect this is another one of Moses' problems. He liked the fact that everybody had to come to him to find out what God thought, even if it was between two puppies. I'm making the puppy thing up, but I can imagine. Can you imagine knowing your neighbors, the petty arguments that they would have come to Moses with? Those other people that live on your block? You had to listen to that all day, you'd go crazy. If they had to listen to you, they'd go crazy. With all the petty things, Moses liked to be that one guy that the whole nation came to for that. Something else is power. If we share responsibility, we'll have to give away some of our power. You need, as parents, you need to share responsibilities with your kids. Your kids shouldn't be sitting at home when you're waiting on them hand and foot. That's crazy. But if you're going to give them responsibility, you have to give them power. To give them responsibility and no power, that's just as crazy. You know, I mean, your kids should learn how to cut the grass. But you may like it cut a certain way. I like my grass cut on an angle. I do. I don't like this up and down stuff. I like an angle. It makes it look real pretty. Now, if my kid goes out and I give him the responsibility to cut the grass and he wants to go up and down, you know what I have to do is give him the power to decide whether he wants to go in angles, if he wants to go up and down, if he wants to go backwards and forwards, if he wants to do little squares all along the front lawn, or if he wants to do big circles. It doesn't matter. The grass has to be cut when he's done. And that's where we flunk out in responsibility. Is we run out there going, no, you're doing it wrong. I want it to go like this. Not like this. Oh, hey, son, we had this sweet little old lady that lived across the road. God bless. She was a good Christian lady, served God. And she asked that the worst thing you could do is ever cut her grass. She asked Luke, she wanted to hire Luke to cut her grass. And I looked out the window across the road, and Luke's got the lawnmower, and she's right beside him the whole way. And you know what he did at the end of the day? That was it. She was done. I'm not going over there, Dad. I can't handle it anymore. He'd have cut her grass fine, but she wouldn't give him the power to cut it the way he wanted to cut it. All right, something else that stops us from giving responsibility is fear. We're responsible for the outcome, so we'd rather hold on tight rather than trust others. But God's not like that with us, is he? Another one is this: it's my baby complex. We started it. It's ours. We've looked after it. We've coddled it. And we can't let it go. Oh boy, does this happen with families and people when they've started something and when it's time to give the keys to the kids, or when it's time to allow somebody else to do something in your workplace that you started, a project that's your baby. So we hang on to it. And the last one is, you're too busy. You'd rather do it all because it takes too much time to coach and train and help for other people. It just takes too much time. And this is a lie that keeps people trapped in that crazy cycle of busyness that, well, you know what, it's just too much time to train somebody else, so I won't be so busy. What Moses was doing, Jethro said, it's not good. He had no limits on his busyness. He was so busy. He was burning himself out. He was burning out those around him. And Jethro says, Moses, you've got to share the responsibility. And there's things in your life you need to start to share responsibility. You need to say, you know what, somebody else needs to do that. I can't do it. It's out of my sphere. It's out of my giftings. Somebody else has got to do that. And so instead of being crazy busy, Moses needed to create space for God in his life. That is the antidote for you and I and our busy lives, is to create space for God. Moses started off with this awesome, close relationship with God. Many of you have had and still do a relationship that's awesome and wonderful. But it slips away. It slips through your life when you're too busy. And before you know it, you're just working for God and wearing yourself out, but you really have lost that closeness to God, and you don't commune with him anymore. You don't hear his voice anymore. You're no longer connected to him like you should be. Instead of hearing God, he now spent all of his time listening to the petty complaints of his people against each other. Here's what Jethro says to Moses, verses 19 and 20. Jethro said, now listen to me, I'll give you counsel, and God be with you. You should represent the people before God. In other words, Moses, you need to get back on your knees before God for these people. And you should bring their cases before God and teach them the statutes and instructions and make known to them the way they are to go and the things that they are to do. What was Moses? He was so busy. What did he need to do? He needed to stop and get back to God. He needed to get back to old-fashioned prayer to God. That's what he needed. He was missing that. First of all, Moses was to get back to petition. Moses needed to make space in his life for God so that he could take the needs of the people and begin to pray and petition and intercede for them before God. That's what he needed to be doing. Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1 says, I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people. This is what the New Testament church ought to be up to, folks, is prayer. Is coming to God first of all, not last of all, or if you just have time, but first of all, prayer, petition, intercession, thanksgiving for all people. We need to get back to our knees and stop all this craziness and take the issues and the stuff in our families, in our friends, in our work, first of all, to God. Abraham Lincoln said this, I've been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My own wisdom and that of all about me seemed insufficient for the day. If a guy like Abraham Lincoln needed to pray, to go first thing to prayer, so do you and I. If you're crazy busy, you don't need to go faster. You don't need another gadget to save you time or to take your time. What you need to do, rather than go faster, is to slow down and find a place to pray. Rick Warren said, the more you pray, the less you'll panic. The more you worship, the less you'll worry. You'll feel more patient and less pressured. So Moses was first. He was to pray first of all. And he was also to get back in his life to worship. Moses needed time to connect with God and to hear God's voice. Why? So that he could hear from God and then he could lead the people. He would hear from God. He would have direction and strength and knowledge to know what to do. And you and I need that time of worship where we just connect with God and we are able to hear from Him. John chapter 4, verse 23. Jesus says this, the time is coming and now has come when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. Worship attunes you to God. It attunes you to what the Spirit of God is wanting to say. And Jesus said that the Spirit would lead us and give us guidance. If we will create space for God, He will speak to us. That's what you and I need today more than anything else. Is not more stuff, not more gadgets, not more time, but we need more prayer, more worship, more time with God. I like this. Let Mother Teresa speak into your life, and she speaks into mine through this for sure. In the silence of the heart, God speaks. You know, that's why we so often we don't hear Him speak. We're just running on busyness and what we think we should do. Because we don't get alone with God. We don't pray. Moses wasn't praying. Moses wasn't spending time with God. He was too busy doing stuff outside of his sphere without any limits. Mother Teresa says, in the silence of the heart, God speaks. If you face God in prayer and silence, God will speak to you. But why is silence important? Because you need to hear the still small voice, and you won't hear it without silence. Then you will know that you are nothing, and it is only when you realize your nothingness, your emptiness, that God can fill you with Himself. Oh, that we would all have that space for God. Rather than living with no limits in this craziness or busyness that we've adopted and thought this is good. Really? Oh, that we would share responsibilities and stop trying to hang on to stuff, but allow other people, teach other people, show other people. Don't let your kids help you with the dishes. Let them do the dishes. I'm serious, folks. I'm serious. Don't let your kids help you with the vacuuming. Show them how to vacuum and then put it on a list. That we would make space for God. The Apostle Paul teaches in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 17, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. See, here's what he's saying. You know what? We work within our own sphere. We set limits. We allowed other people to exercise their ministry gifts. We allowed people to use their abilities, their giftings, their stuff, what they enjoyed to do. We got out of their way. We let them do their thing. And when God began to move because of that, we didn't take any of the glory, but we recognized that it was God glorifying Himself through us. To God be the glory. Great things He has done. Let's get our lives in that place where we are so attuned to Christ that we live for His glory. That we need to see that everything we do is because of the power of God working through us. Amen? Yes. What Moses was doing was not good. What many of us are doing is not good either. We're crazy busy. We need to share the responsibility and trust other people with their gifts and abilities. We need to create space for God. By setting limits and allowing other people to use their gifts, God will receive greater glory through your life. I'm going to ask if the worship team would come back, and there is a song called Eagle's Wings, where we just need God to just lift us up, to lift every area of busyness, to give it to Him, to lift every area of need and give it to Him. You know, God not only wants us to give other people the responsibilities, but allow other people to carry us in our needs. And I want you to think about the things that you're busy about today. Crazy busy. And really, do you have to be in that place? Or is that a place of your own making? Have you made yourself crazy busy today? Let's stand together. There's a verse of Scripture Jesus invites us today. In Matthew 11:28, come to me, all you who are weary, all you who are crazy busy, and burdened, worn out, burned out, frustrated, full of stress, and I will give you rest. Some of you just need to take a breath and go, oh, God, I'm carrying so much of my own making. Things that used to be fun are such a chore today because I piled so much stuff on top of life that it's just too heavy for me to carry anymore. I've lost connection with you. And I'm just asking that you take me back. Maybe this morning you need to come fresh to the cross and say, Lord, the cross and your presence have gotten lost in all the busyness of my life. And I come to the cross and I ask for forgiveness. You just come to Him and say, Lord, forgive me for losing you. I'm just like Moses. I had a great relationship with you, but I got busy and you got lost in the midst of it all. I allowed that to happen. Forgive me, Lord. Maybe you've never known Jesus Christ in your life. And today God has spoken to your heart and you'd say, I need God to help me with sorting things out in my life with Christ. I need Christ to take some of this stuff and sin. Now, I need to start doing some things different. I need a new life. And you say, Lord Jesus, if that's you this morning, make this your prayer. Lord Jesus, come into my life. Forgive my sins. Just tell him that in your own way, in your own voice. Lord Jesus, come into my life. Forgive my sins. Help me to trust you. And help me to trust you and to live for you. Just say that. Say it in your own words and he will come. Now Jesus said, for those of you that are weary, you're busy, crazy busy. You're burning out. And burdened. You're stressed, you're frustrated. He says, come to me. And I'd just like us to gather around this altar for a time as we sing and just begin to pray and say, oh God, and begin to lay some of these things that you're carrying at the foot of the cross. And just have that time of unloading this morning in His presence. Let Him carry some of that and show you how to cut some time, some space for Him. Lord, breathe on your people, Lord. Breathe a fresh breath of your power and your Spirit and your life into our lives, Lord. Lord, help us to stop living without limits, but to begin to share and not take everything on. To know our gifts and our abilities and our weaknesses. And Lord, to live a life, to cut space in our day so that we can have time with you. Lord, when we get more busy, may we get busy with more prayer. In Jesus' name. Lord, reopen some of those communication channels that have been closed on our end for such a long time because we haven't been listening, because we've been running frantic, because we've been crazy busy. Lord, help us to share the responsibility and let go of some of the power. And Lord, I pray that our lives would just increase 100-fold as we begin to follow you like Moses did and listen to good words and good wisdom. Thank you, Lord. Lord, we just breathe in a sense of your peace today. Your life. God bless you as you go with Him today. This week, when you get so busy you don't have time, that's when you know it's time to pray. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Lord.
We hope you have enjoyed Jesus and Me, and will listen in again next week. If you would like to know more about Jesus, you can download our free Bible study, Exploring Christ, from our website, kingsvillechurch.com. Just click on the Media tab and scroll down to Resources. If you would like to make a donation, giving to this ministry can be done on our website using PayPal. Scroll down to the bottom of our homepage and click on the PayPal tab. All donations are tax receivable. May God bless you as you follow Jesus.